Like Mad Max before her, this is a post-apocalyptic world set in Australia, complete with genetically modified kangaroos, one of which will become her boyfriend. Would it be a kangaroo friend, boyfriend? Where the water and power company controls what's left of civilization in the wasteland of the outback. From the comic book brought to the big screen, every bit as quirky as the comic before it. This is the incredible, surreal, oddball, weird tale of this film with Lori Petty, Naomi Watts, Malcolm McDowell, Ice-T, 1995, Tank Girl. Tank Girl is a really weird film with a lot of really weird, oddball dialogue, visuals, turns of events, is that a phrase? A whole lot of plot developments that are odd, weird, unique. I really like this film. Now, I don't think it did very well culturally speaking when you're dealing with the normies of the world, by which I mean those people that are not diehard nerds that were familiar with the mythos. Now, full disclosure, I did not read the Tank Girl comic books. I was familiar with what they were and what they looked like. I had seen the inside of them, so I can't speak to the story itself. But the oddball way that the comic book didn't necessarily go in sequential order, it gave you weird outtakes. It was sort of punk, cyberpunk before its time, the cyber techno version of what later would be steampunk. It's kind of hard to describe, but it was a unique thing all its own. She looked, and her friends in the post-apocalyptic world looked like something you would see in punk, goth, pre-emo, paleo-emo sort of culture around discos at the time. It was really unique for her and being part of this sort of subculture. Translating this to the big screen, we get this film that does a lot of weird animated outtakes included in the visuals. Everything is consistent with the comic book. I felt like, as not a fan of the comics, it looked like it was being very faithful to the comics. Only a diehard comic fan could say whether it was really satisfying all of those needs for them. But I think that makes it difficult for the normie crowd, the people that just saw the preview and thought that looks cool, post-apocalyptic future set in Australia, Tank Girl, it's got a tank, you can't lose. So they would go and see it. Would they get it? Would they get enough of it to like it? Would it be completely over their head, or would it seem completely bizarre? Only individuals can make that call, and I think this is when you really struggle to nail the audience numbers that you're looking for. But you have to salute the effort to keep something artistically correct. When you're adapting it to the big screen, of course, you know that you've got to open it up a little bit to more of the normie crowd. You're not looking for only fans of the comic book to see your movie. You've got to make it accessible, use that term without it being charged in this day and age. You've got to make it approachable as a topic, as a subject, as a plot to people that know nothing about it. At the same time, if you just crash and burn and forget about all of the source material, then you're going to make something that's completely new. And even if it's successful, you're going to lose that fan base. Wow, seems like I could be talking about current Star Wars, Star Trek, Lord of the Rings, any of this stuff being currently butchered by Hollywood, destroying the built-in fan base that used to love it. So Tank Girl has to walk this delicate balance. And my feeling as sort of relative normie, not super familiar with the comics, but getting the genre, I thought it was really well done, even though a lot of the critics didn't like it and it was not a huge cultural phenomenon. Weaving together the tale of clearly taking from a lot of the Mad Max stuff, a lot of things from previous post-apocalyptic, and being in Australia because the comic originally comes from Britain, so they set it out there in the outback. They do a good job of giving you some development of what the conflict is, at least post whatever disaster has left the world. They tell us it was a comet, and now people are scrambling for leftover resources. Instead of getting various governments or political or militia factions We get the Water and Power Company, which is really interesting. Controlling the basic utilities is controlling people's lives. And so plausibly, when civilization has broken down and you're out in this wasteland, the people that the power company and the water reclamation plant are going to be the most powerful people post the breakdown, not any government or military if those things have been removed from the equation. And so smartly, brilliantly, insightfully, we get this situation where control of the water and power by the water power company, by the malevolent villain, played as always brilliantly by Malcolm McDowell. That's where the real power is. We also get the genetically modified soldiers, the Rippers, who are made out of kangaroo and probably human DNA, at least you hope, because you know that Boog, one of them, becomes her boyfriend, whatever thing. And the acquiring of equipment like a tank, Jet Girl, played by Naomi Watts, appears. Eventually in the comic, there would be a sub girl who had a submarine. This is sort of a weird, unusual, very unique to this particular story to have them associated with just these pieces of military equipment. But it works out. The girl with the pet tank, if you live on a tank, that's going to gobble up a lot of fuel. But in a society where you're fighting over the scraps of things, if you've got a tank, you're more likely to be able to get the fuel, right? So you're more likely to be safe on your tank because of the firepower, or even just the monstrosity that it is. Like a giant turtle, you can get inside it and nobody's going to get at you. So there's all of these benefits. And giving us the story within the film of how Jet Girl acquires the jet. We never get to Sub Girl, but using these technologies to survive and to fight for freedom from the water power company. This is really good stuff. And it comes to, in the end, I find it really entertaining. I've seen the movie several times. It's a lot better than you think it ought to be when you hear all of the details, but they did a really good job of putting it together so that it is its own cohesive universe, and it makes a lot more sense. I just recently, this morning, actually reviewed Barbed Wire. Barbed Wire would come out a year after this or so. Similar kind of, but one does a good job of putting it all together, and one does a really lousy job. Tank Girl does a really good job of putting it together. It'll never be a giant, epic, memorable piece of legendary. It will never be Gone with the Wind, but for those of us that like this type of movie or like that genre or things in that genre, because it's really unique, Tank Girl will always be on the list of, hey, Tank Girl's on, and you put it on because it is just that good. And again, despite what the critics said about it, because the critics didn't read or understand the comic book, they couldn't grasp the Tank Girl verse. That's Tank Girl, 1995, Lori Petty, Naomi Watts. Check it out. Let me know what you think. Oh, and the title track by Ice-T, that really dates it. My mistake, I was putting this together and realized that one lady is called Sub Girl by the end of this film. So Tank Girl, Jet Girl, and Sub Girl do all appear.